Show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, Blender HD. If you want to follow me there on Twitter, and this is the show where we talk about yesterday's slate through Results DB. Take a look at some sharper players lineups and exposures and everything. Maybe take a little look about what's going on today in MLB, or talk about whatever you want. I mean, like this show is guided by you in the YouTube chat. So yesterday we built the lineup for that 3-game early slate. I broke even. I mean, we got the Royals against McCullers, but didn't get Scooble because we played the other thing or whatever. The Cubs and the Rockies actually put up more runs even in 7 innings. So, I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. So we could do that, I guess, maybe for the little 3-game early slate, or talk about the late slate, or whatever you want in the YouTube chat. I see you guys in there. Suki Singh, Card Fan, Michael Dompier, Jerome Lewis, Yow Pete, Sterling Woods, Daniel Hutchins, Hog Lawrence, Rob F, GR Sorseda, Doug Montgomery, Tim Light. Hit that thumbs up button, right? You know what to do. Hit the thumbs for me. Give me the love. Hit the subscribe button if you're new. Hit the notification bell to know when the channel goes live. The NFL schedule should be coming out soon. We got a ton of stuff for NFL. Next month, it's going to be just constant nonstop shows, and content, and everything. We got like 2 weeks before the season starts, right? And I'm at the point where maybe I'm finally catching up on who's on what team, right? That's where I am, right? Because I don't pay attention to the preseason. I don't pay attention to. Wake me up the Thursday before the first DFS slate, right, of the regular season. Some people grind preseason DFS, and I can see that there'd be an edge there. Is it worth it for me? I don't know. I don't do it. So we'll be talking next month. It'll be all over the place. So it won't be just MLB. It'll be MLB, NFL, MMA, soccer, whatever it is, right? You could learn something on this show regardless if you don't play the sport. Because it's all about strategy. It's all about game theory here. So yesterday, it seems like the sharp move was to fade Ohtani, which I kind of did. I had very little Ohtani. I had a little Ohtani. I completely whiffed on the ownership yesterday. Completely. I completely whiffed on the ownership. I mean, not completely. Okay, maybe not completely. I thought Ohtani would be like 20% owned, not 26% owned. I thought Wheeler and Woodruff and Ray would be the highest owned pitchers. I thought Wheeler would be like 38% owned. Woodruff would be 30. Ray would be like 28, something like that, but it was way more spread out. When I saw Woodruff come in 17%, I'm like, oh, I ended up with more. I actually ended up over the field, even though I thought I was going to be way under the field. Same thing with the Wheeler. Wheeler had like 20% Wheeler. I'm like, oh, if I knew he was 28% owned, I probably would have played more. Instead, I mean, not over, but still more than I did. And Robbie Ray, he was my highest exposed pitcher. I had like 40% him, but I played a lot of Walker Buehler, thinking that he would be the contrarian play. But no, actually, he came in higher owned than Woodruff and Snell. And I played a little Snell, a little Giolito, a little Castillo. Trying to get different at pitcher. Didn't play much of Josiah Gray. Actually played stacks against him. Edric Cabrera, I had about the field. Oh, he's a 5K pitcher. It's like How much do I want to put stock in the guy making his major league debut? It's not like he had a bad outing, but he only had 2 strikeouts. Robbie Ray goes out and strikes out 14. You're pretty much going to need him. Just looking at this, it's like the consensus thing was more, like Ray, obviously. But people were over on Josiah Gray. It's the usual suspects. Not many went Giolito. I had way more Giolito than this. I had like 20% Giolito. No, I think it was 14. He couldn't fit into lineups a lot of times. Okay. And then the chalk yesterday, bats wise, we got what the Red Sox, the Indians, or the Guardians. They're still the Indians, right? We still call them the Indians. The Diamondbacks, that was a little bit questionable. I know they were cheap. We got the Indians, the Twins. The Twins were cheap, but they got there. The Twins, the Red Sox, the Angels. The truck kind of got there yesterday. In the beginning, it was dicey. In the beginning, it was pretty dicey. In the beginning, it was like, do you have Brandon March? Do you have Robbie Ray? It's like, okay, I got them too. I'm over in both of them. Let's go. And then just everything comes in. Well, Ramir, Cleveland didn't get there, right? Rosario, 2 points at 22%. Ramirez, 20%, no points. I didn't have that much at Cleveland. But I had plenty of Boston, but just not as much as the field. Teams I had the most of yesterday was the Phillies, the Mets, and the Giants, and then the Red Sox. The Red Sox were at that point where I don't know if they were going to be efficiently owned or just slightly overowned, like Schwarber's overowned. That's easy. Bogart's 19%, but a lot of these Red Sox were not that overowned, like Kiki Hernandez. Like the Red Sox stack was going to come in at like a total of like 10 to 12% of lineups. I'd be like, okay, I think that's efficient. Even though they would be one of the chalkier stacks, it wasn't one of those stacks where they're overowned by the extent in which you should be playing much of them at all. Cleveland, I thought, was more of that. I thought Cleveland was way overowned. I thought Minnesota was way overowned. I didn't have much Minnesota, which obviously hurt me, right? Didn't have much Polanco or Josh Donaldson. Jeffers down. Okay, they didn't do that well. Sano, right? 14. You just have to basically fill out your Angels, Red Sox, Red Sox, and Twins lineups. Then you had to sweat. Then if you had that, you still have to sweat out like the longest slate in the history of slates for the MLB. Then the Dodgers Padres game, which is the latest game on the slate, that goes what, 16 innings? I don't think that game ended until 4 a.m. Eastern. You stayed up for that sweat. Who had to sweat that? Green Rush, wherever that guy, 1 entry. Euler Ray, 1, 2, 3, 4-man Angels, 3-man Boston, and Josh Donaldson. Yeah, I guess that'll do it. Yeah. Not much else do you need. Right. Dalladino, what was his best lineup? Woodruff Wheeler. So didn't even have Ray. Yeah, if he had Ray, he would have won. Minnesota 5-man. Will Smith, Kyle Schwarber, Cedric Mullins, 1-offs. Okay, that does it. Yeah, all the Twins got pretty much in double digits. Osmos top lineup. Similar. 1, 2, 3, a 4-man Angels, 3 Twins, and Will Smith's 26. Yeah, the highest scoring catcher. There's a Baltimore stack. Yeah, right. 3 Baltimore outfielders hit home runs. Right, 3 Baltimore outfielders at over 20 points. Snell, Woodruff. Yeah, Snell did well. Not Ray. But that's kind of the combinations that you need. Yeah, if you had Baltimore, the Baltimore 5-man really didn't do enough. Right, Mancini, Urias. The other guy, just all the outfielders. See what's Neil's best lineup. Yeah, here's Cleveland. Right, Cleveland got, like, depending on who you played on. Right. Jose Ramirez and Ahmed Rosario didn't get there with the most owned pieces of the Cleveland stack. But the other places got there. Well, Straw didn't. But Mercado had a home run. Reyes had a home run. Yu Chang had a big game. Austin Hedges has a home run. Yeah, I mean, Cleveland got there, just not the two most owned pieces of the stack didn't make it. So yes, and he didn't have either in this line. I like this line with the 2%. Like you could Wander Franco one off. You're still playing chalky Jared Walsh. You're still getting somewhat different in the pitcher. Woodruff Wheeler combination. I compare that to the percentages up here. I mean, instead of playing a chalk Kyle Schwarber, who still got there. It's going to be very hard to find a lot of Brandon Marsh one-offs. Most likely his 28 is going to come by way of a stack. Let's see nerdy tenors. Best lineup. Stassi. This is a 3-3-2. Adele, Marsh, Stassi, Blanco, Donaldson, and Hoskins, Galvis, Harper. Obviously, Galvis doesn't do anything. Harper. But look, Harper, 5%, Galvis, 2% of the Hoskins, 9%. I thought the Phillies were under on yesterday. I thought the Mets-Giants game was under on for the pitchers that they had. Walker and Cleto. Yeah, it didn't work out. You're right. And the Mets left so many people on base yesterday. Anytime I see Pete Alonso with bat, he has his bases loaded, and it's a double play or a fly out. Like, please, can we do how many people are you gonna leave on base, Petey? Right? And then Javier Baez doesn't know how to run the bases, right? And it's the Mets. I should have known better, right? They could have scored a lot of runs. They had base runners the whole game. They just couldn't get them in. Looking at the YouTube chat. Michael Dampier asks, hindsight, if you knew Ray would be 25% and Wheeler 28%, would you have had less Ray and more Wheeler? Or just more Wheeler and less something else? I don't know if it would have necessarily affected my Ray. I think it would more affected my Giolito and Castillo. Right? Because I played like 15% to 18% Giolito and Castillo on DraftKings. Because they were going, I mean, they're in the single digit of ownership. And those guys have plenty of upside. But thinking that Wheeler was going to be 38% owned, well, that's going to come out of my Wheeler exposure, more likely. So if I knew Wheeler was only going to be 28% owned, which is, I think, actually under owned. I thought his efficient ownership is somewhere around 32%, like somewhere around there. I thought Ray's efficient ownership was around 35%, like somewhere around there. So Wheeler would then be under on. Instead of me having 18 or 20% Wheeler, I'd end up with 25 to 20. I'd end up with actually closer to efficient ownership of Wheeler, of what I believe, 28%. And where would that come out? It wouldn't come out of Ray. Because if Ray was going to be 25%, and I think he should be 35%, I'm still going to have I'm going to buy way more of him. Just to make Wheeler, and same for Woodruff. I thought Woodruff would be 20, high 20s, low 30s. And he ended up with 17. And I had about 18% of him. So had I known that, I thought his efficient ownership was somewhere in the high 20s. I would have more of him, which it just makes Castillo and Giolito lineups unnecessary. So it's more likely that it would have came out of that than Robbie Ray. If I knew Ray was 25%, if Ray ended up being 38 to 40%, then it would have flipped the other way. Then I would have had much less Ray. I don't know if you understand the concept behind that. You're still making lineups. Like, yeah, you could go all, like, if Wheeler's 28 and Ray's 25, you could have just said lock button on both of them and just build 100 lineups that way. I mean, you could. I like being a little bit more diversified. But I also like playing high ceiling pitchers at low ownership, right? Blake Snell. He was what, 7% owned? I had 10%. I thought that was like efficient. He did well. I wasn't going to be over the field on Edward Cabrera. I wasn't going to be over the field on Josiah Gray or any of those types of guys. Like what? Why? The salary was like irrelevant on yesterday's slate. You tried to build 5x 5-3 type lineups yesterday. Like you can build practically anything you want, especially with the Angels projecting well and the Twins projecting well and the Indians projecting well, and they're cheaper. Like you could have built plenty of Woodruff Wheeler lineups with those teams. Yeah, maybe you don't get Schwarber in the lineup. Maybe you don't get JD Martinez. You don't get Jared Walsh in that lineup for the Angels, right? You get something else. But with that, like, what lineups have 5K pitchers? How many of those can I make? It just seemed unnecessary. The salary. I mean, I had some of my lineups. I left 2,000 on the table to make a 5-3 combination that projected better than other lineups. Well, what am I going to do? Not play those? Because I'm leaving 2,000 on the table. But I'm not going to leave 2,000 on the table to go from Robbie Ray to Josiah Gray. Like, no, I'm gonna take the pedigree pitcher and just go, well, Josiah Gray has to beat out too many like stud pitchers on this. If you know, I don't want to call them studs, but significantly higher talent pitchers. That's why I didn't want to rely on Gray and Cabrera much. Just look at the slate for pitching. We had Ray, Wheeler, Woodruff, Snell, Giolito, Castillo, Buehler. Yes, it's quite possible that Cabrera and Gray, or any of the other, if you want to play whatever one of the other pitchers, could outscore one of those 6, right? Yeah, sure, yeah, quite possible. One of those guys gets blown up, and Cabrera has 20 points, and it's like, oh, I got 20 for 5,000, and so much better than that one guy, right? Wheeler gets blown up, and he has 7 points, right? That type of thing. Yeah, but there's 5 other guys with that skill set that's up there. So you're gonna have to beat out so many of them, right? Look how many pitchers scored like 30 points yesterday. Ace pitchers, right? Snell, Woodruff. Wheeler came close. I mean, he had a bad. They left him out in the 9th inning, and he gave up some runs. Buehler put up almost 30. Ray obviously was the highest scoring slate. Like, you're gonna have to beat out all of those guys. Uncrabby Cabby. Hey, Jordan, how would you determine what you think the efficient ownership should be? By building lineups? I mean, most of the time when I'm saying this, I'm going completely by feel. You could simulate it out. Run lineups. If you don't know, if you're not experienced, just run lineups in lineup HQ. Set a cap. I've showed you this before. Set a cap. You don't want 100%. No, nothing's going to be 100% owned. Right? Figure out who the highest owned batter and highest owned pitcher is going to be. And what you believe they are. You put the hitter max. You know, no batter on this. What we have a 9-game slate. Let's take a look at this player. Right, so Scherzer, we have ownership at 40%, right? You can even go by this 40. Alec would give me 31% owned. I don't think so. Let's say 40% for a pitcher. Hitter is the highest owned. Kyle Schwarber again. Kyle Schwarber never not going to be the chalk. 28%. So let's put it at 30 and 40. Just whatever. Right, just based on the bat projections. I'd be more inclined to do this with a set of aggregate projections, but your goal here is to just be directionally accurate. Exact. Don't try. I don't play to be exact. I play to be directionally correct more often than not. So you can build a simulation system to, do what like Nerdy Tenor does. What is the efficient? I'm going to have 16% of this guy because he should be 60%. Right? That type. You could do that. 99.9% of people don't have a system in order to do that. So I'm going to build, I even just build 150, whatever, make it quicker. Number of unique players, let's, do we need one? Right, because we already have the caps here. I'll make it 2, because there'll be a little bit of diversity. 49,000 of 5, whatever. I already did. I'm modifying this. What is it telling me this? Already modified. Okay, here we go. Boom, boom, boom. There. I made it zeros. Just to see what it comes out. Like if you were to build using the median projections as it stands right now, how much of certain people would you get? You set a cap at the top. And you see what happens. Okay. So there we go. Here we're at 150. This is without even stacking or anything. Okay. How many lineups would these guys fit in? Let's even do it with stack, because that's a little bit more realistic for GPPs. Let's just stack 5, and that's it. Just stacking 5 with one-offs. Don't even do 5-3. 2 uniques, whatever. You don't have to be exact. So we're going to run 150, and what we're going to see is based on your projection set. I'm using the bat projections. You could use whatever projection set that you trust or you use. You could aggregate and average them all out if you want, and then put them in. And you're just going to run line. What do lineups look like that have high median projections for this slot? Then you compare who's showing up more versus what they're projected to be owned, and go, that guy should be more owned. By what extent? I don't know. I don't know the exact extent, but it's going to be closer to the extent that they're in your lines, right? What's the efficient ownership? I don't know. I'm not going to know the exact. I'm going to have a feel about what the range should be based on how many lineups they fit. So I was building lineups yesterday. It's like I could fit in Woodruff and Wheeler into all these lineups and still be fine. So that's why I expected them to be higher owned. Like the efficient ownership, these guys should be higher. You can build cheap lineups and be perfectly fine. And I thought that's what the field was going to do more of, and they didn't. And that's why those pictures came in lower than I expected. Like, why are people going to build Dodgers stacks when the 2 highest priced pitchers in a Ranger stack actually project better? Or the Indians, or that, I thought that was the chalk. People are going to do Indians, Twins, Woodruff, Wheeler, like that type of line. Ray Wheeler, one of 2 of the 3. So I'm like, okay, how do I not play that line? I'll look at the pieces of that line. Okay. So you take a look, like, go to pitchers, for instance. Okay. So I'm jamming in. I'm just 150, just cap it at 40. So this would tell you that based on the bat projections, Patrick Corbin is significantly underowned at 2%. if that ends up being his ownership projection. I mean, we're talking, it's 11 in the morning. Kikuchi may actually be overowned at 25%. Like compared to Eliezer Hernandez, like we see here, Darvish may actually be underowned. Not because he should be 19% owned. I don't know what he should be. Like, should Corbin be 40% owned? Probably not. That's probably way too high to be his efficient ownership. But it's definitely not 2. Maybe his efficient ownership, because of his price and how he lands into lineups, maybe his efficient ownership should be 16. Eliezer Hernandez, maybe his efficient ownership is 28%. Kikuchi may only be like 16. Maybe his efficient ownership is 16. Darvish's efficient ownership may be 10. Because remember, we didn't set caps on the teams. I'm going to get a look how much Red Sox you're going to get, right? So unless you're planning on playing Red Sox in every lineup, then oh, you're going to have to play like this. Like I didn't cap what you're right. We're getting all this Red Sox. But based on lineup construction in general, you can see, oh, Sale and Scherzer. Like, should they be 40% owned? I don't know. Set the cap higher and see, do they come in a lot of lineups? Hernandez Corbin. Do we have Sale Scherzer lineups? Yeah. What is Sale's? Yeah, and you get the Indians, right? I mean, like the 2 chalk teams on the 2 chalk teams. If you're going to go cheap, Sale Scherzer, these lineups are going to look like Rangers, Indians. You have a one-off, Goldschmidt one-off, I guess. Rizzo one-off over here. That's what they're going to look like. So basically, if you just use the bat projections, Sale Scherzer lineups look more like Indians, Red Sox, Twins. And then the cheaper pitchers allow you to just basically pay up for those teams. So now you're able to play for Admiral Reyes or JD Martinez or something, right? Or Kyle Schwarber or whatever. It doesn't change. It doesn't really change all that much. And you look at the batters and you go, well, now it's all based around, what you could fit in your lineup. So you can see that the Red Sox come in a lot. The Cardinals come in a lot. Franmil Reyes, 14%. He's showing up in 30% of your lineups. So maybe Franmil Reyes is actually under-owned at 14%. Maybe he should be 19. We also have the Indians are going to be owned, but they're also in combination with these two chalk pitchers. So Bradley Zimmer, 30%. Devers at 30%. So if you try jamming this in with 30% being the cap, this is what comes out. You're going to have to play a lot of Yohel Pozo at whatever. It's probably, minimum price probably? But you see here, Hunter Renfroe, 17%. He's only going to get 2% owned in a Boston stack, and Boston's going to be a chalk team. Hunter Renfroe should be more than 2% owned. Should he be 17% owned? I don't know, but it's probably somewhere in the middle. Probably should be 12% owned. He's going to be 2, so probably play more of them. Same for the Ranger stack. You can play you can play cheap Rangers, and you're gonna why not play DJ Peters? He's showing up at 11% of your lineups. Only gonna be 3% owned, according to this projection. We're going under the guise that this number is actually. So that's how you can do. You can just look and see who shows up a little bit more than they should, and then what you could do, you could also cap the stacks. Right, because realistically, no one's going to play more than a 9-game slate. You'd see how you could. I mean, we don't have it now. You could go to see what the ownership of the average ownership of the stack is. But on this slate, I don't see any stack getting more than 20%, even those Indians and the Red Sox. So maybe you cap that, and then you build. Let's do the 150 again. No batter more than 30%, no pitcher more than 40%, and no stack more than 20%. And then just see what the projections spit out. It's not going to look that much different than what we just looked at. It's just not every lineup is going to be Boston, Texas, Minnesota type of thing. Just to get a sense. Did I show you exact numbers? No, I don't know the exact numbers. And the more and more you do something like this, the more and more you don't even have to do it anymore. You understand the dynamics of roster construction. Well, too expensive pitchers, cheap stack. Cheap pitchers, expensive stack. Like paying up at shortstop, paying down at outfield. Like you understand the roster dynamics of how lineups can be constructed, and you can just visualize it in your head. And you become a little bit more instinctual. Where you could look and you go, expensive pitchers should be more owned based on this, and then they end up not being, or whatever. Let's see. It's almost done. So here we go. We still get pretty much the same pitchers, right? Still pretty much now we get more. Get a lot of Brandon Belt. Assuming that is a one-off. Right? First base must be weak for the teams that, for obviously the Red Sox may not even have an eligible first baseman playing. So maybe Brandon Belt goes under. But look, we get a ton of Jason Martin. We get a ton of these Rangers. You still get a ton of these teams. I mean, they get some of the we sort by team. But let's sort by team. Like we you get a Diamondback stack here. So there's a Diamondback stack. I'm doing this bit more so than showing you the stack summary. You get here's the Red Sox. But you see here, Travis Shaw, Hunter Renfroe, probably going to be underowned relative to the stack. So if you decided to go, oh, I'm going to play the Red Sox, chalky Red Sox, maybe you play with Renfroe, Shaw, Vasquez. This discrepancy in ownership shouldn't exist. You play less Schwarber and more Renfroe. Kyle Schwarber seems to be over-owned at 28%, but not wildly so. Probably Schwarber's efficient ownership is maybe 18, maybe. Bogarts maybe a little bit higher, only because he's eligible at shortstop, right? Scarcer position. Then you look at the Indians, and you go, oh, maybe Miles Straw ends up being over-owned. Maybe Daniel Johnson ends up being under-owned. Andres Jimenez, you play him instead of one of these players. Okay. You look here, you don't get much Dodgers. You don't get much Royals. You get some Minnesota. Some against Sale. You get a lot of Yankees because they seem way too cheap. Rizzo, Gallo. Judge isn't that cheap. You see here, you don't where's Stanton? Whatever, unless he's not in the projected lineup. I don't know. So you look at this and you go, okay, maybe Aaron Judge, he's going to be 4% owned, and I'm getting 11% of him in my 150 build doing research. Maybe his efficient ownership is closer to 11 than it is to 4. So I'd want to play more of him. We look here. Let's say for Bryce Harper. Because basically this is the spot where Kyle Schwarber or a Red Sox Franmil Reyes would be. You go, okay, Harper the efficient ownership seems to be closer to 11 than it is to 2. So if he's going to be 2, I want to play more. Brandon Belt may actually, if he's going to be 15% owned, it's quite possible he's underowned for the first base position available on the slate, say from Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, take a look at this discrepancy. It's jamming in one-offs of Goldschmidt at 22% owned, where Brandon Belt is 15% lower owned. I don't know if they have a better projection, but it can't be that. They'll probably be close. So maybe guys like this end up going under-owned. Maybe Goldschmidt should be 22%. Maybe he should be. I don't think so. But I don't know if he's significantly over-owned. The same thing for like Adolis Garcia at like barely the Rangers don't cost anything today. Right, but Juan Soto is only fitting into like 2% of lineups, and he's going to be 8% owned while I'm getting a ton of Bryce Harper at 11% or Aaron Judge at 11%. Like that makes Soto over-owned. If obviously, like I said before, we're assuming these numbers are accurate. So there you go. But am I coming up with an exact number? No, it's purely based on being directionally accurate. And then what do you do with that information? If we want to try to exploit the field, then you'd be playing more lineups with those players, more types of lineups with those players and those combinations than you would other lineups. And there you go. And you play them, and then whatever happens, happens. Number 427, Jordan, on average to bigger size slates, 10 plus. Do you ever stack teams that have negative leverage in Slate IQ? I stack all the teams. What does it matter? Slate IQ is not there to tell you who to play. Okay? That's not what Slate IQ is for. Okay, let's take a look at Slate IQ yesterday. Okay? It's very important. I think this is a very important concept, which I've said 47 times, so it's not like this is new. Let's see, Wednesday. What's yesterday's date? Because you can never find it on the actual site because there's no link to it anymore. August 25th. Okay, there. I think we got it. Slate IQ is not there to tell you who to play. Period. End of story. That is not its purpose. Okay? If Slate IQ was accurate, in its simulation. Boston had an 8% Boston stack, which is a 4 or 5 hitter stack based on results from the 25 most similar slates, had an 8% chance of being the winning lineup in comparison to other stacks, right? Arizona, 5.9. Minnesota, 5.3. Cleveland, 5.0. Okay? Boston had the highest chance of winning, but the field would own them at 11.2%, which means they're negative leverage. They're the highest probability, though. Okay? So if you were to build Boston lineups and we're trying to exploit the difference, you would have to build these lineups to make up for this leverage, which means playing Boston with the Dodgers at minus 11.5 leverage or whatever probably is not the best way to go. So if you're building a 5-3, you'd want to play Boston with the Mets here, with the Padres, with the Blue Jays, with someone with positive, the Phillies. There you go. I had plenty of Boston lineups yesterday. They weren't with Minnesota, though. They weren't with the Angels. I mean, maybe some got together. Maybe some. I don't know. Weren't intentional. All it's doing is telling, here are the winning chances, and how do you make your lineups with them? So, yes, I have less because of its negative leverage. I have less of those lineups, but it doesn't mean that that you can't make a Boston lineup that isn't profitable. You can make Boston lineups with 5-man stacks at at negative leverage. You can make Minnesota 5-man stacks, no problem, that are more profitable than if I'm going to build a Baltimore, which has a 0.7% chance, a Baltimore-Philadelphia lineup, right? You go, oh, positive leverage. But look how low the win chances are, 1.7 and 0.7. Right? That lineup is going to be extremely high variance. That's going to be a very high. The standard deviation of that lineup is going to be very high. You could build that line. Oh, I'm building 2 and then fade the Red Sox. It would make more sense to pair the Red Sox with one of those 2 teams. You pair the Red Sox with Philadelphia, that lineup may actually have a higher expected value than pairing 2 positive leverage teams together. I always say this. It depends on the lineup, okay? This doesn't tell you who to play. Now, why did I play more of the like the Mets? High leverage, 3.5, 3.7%. Yes. Those Mets lineups had Red Sox in it, most likely. I probably played more of them because you got more leverage by doing so. Doesn't mean I don't play the Red Sox. Doesn't mean I don't play the Twins. I don't play the Angels. No, that doesn't mean anything at all. There's still some of the highest win percentage teams. Just it's more profitable to build those lineups with the completely contrarian teams. So that's all that this tells me. It's very similar to the MMA model quote that I have. Doesn't tell me who to play. It tells me who gives me the most amount of relative value on this slate. That's all it tells me. And if I'm playing a fighter that's giving me a ton of relative value, I could pair that with a fighter that gives me negative, but they have a 70% chance of a knockout. It's like, well, they have a 70% chance of a knockout, and they're going to be 80% owned. You should be fading them. Like, yeah, it's you're not getting the right odds. That assumes that that's the only fighter in your line, right? So when you look at this chart and you go, oh, I can't play Boston. I can't play Boston. They're negative leverage. I can't play Minnesota. They're negative leverage. No, that doesn't mean that. You know why? Because that's not all it. Now, if your lineup was 5 batters and you had to roster 5 from the same team, and that's all your lineup was, didn't have pitchers, didn't have 3 extra other batters, then you'd be accurate. You'd be like, why am I going to play a Boston stack that no way I could fit 5 from the same team and get positive expected value from it? Because that's the only part of my lineup is 5 guys from the same team. Then you'd be correct. Then playing Boston would be unprofitable. Then playing Minnesota would be unprofitable. Then playing the Angels would be unprofitable. Fortunately, you have 5 of the guys in your lineup. You can play 5 extremely profitable players the rest of the lineup, but the highest win percent chance stack. And that lineup, the expected value of that lineup could be way higher than playing some contrarian low 2 things together. Right? I'm gonna play Snell and Giolito, right? 2 6% owned pitchers. I'm gonna play the 1% owned Miami Marlins or whatever. I look here. I had the Phillies. I'm gonna play the Phillies with let me take a look at another with the Padres. That are both, the Phillies are 7% owned and the Padres are 2% owned with 2 6% owned pitchers. And then you play that lineup, and then you look at some Boston Giants lineup, right? The Red Sox Giants lineup with Robbie Ray and Zach Wheeler, and you go, oh, they won the chalk hit. They're the donkeys. It's like, no, that lineup that I just mentioned, Red Sox Giants with the 2 chalk pitchers, could be way better of a lineup than what you made. If we ran this out a million times, that lineup may have a higher EV. Well, how could it have a higher EV if they're playing the chalk Red Sox at negative leverage? Yeah, well, the Giants are positive, right? Wheeler was 28% owned. Maybe now Wheeler should be 35, right? I mean, so it's not just like, this doesn't mean pick your teams. It means this will help you how to build your lineups. Oh, now that I know this, I have to get different in the rest of my life. Oh, okay. That's it. That's all it does. Some of these like Baltimore. It has positive leverage, but it's so infrequent that this Baltimore stack wins. Oh, so the Padres. I'm just going to go all in on the Padres and the Mets today. Yeah, but the Padres are 2.1 chance. I mean, there's teams that are 3 and 4 times higher likelihood. So does that mean I'm going to play 100 lineups and play the Padres in 80% of them? I mean, you can. And maybe those lineups are plus EV, but your variance is going to be ridiculous. But this doesn't mean I'm going to play all the Padres or all the Mets. Mets were one of my highest exposed teams yesterday. Okay, I played 100 lineups yesterday. Mets were my highest exposed team. You know how many Mets 5-man stacks I had out of 100? 11. They were my highest exposed team. Okay, not 50. I mean, I could have done that if I don't mind the swings. Right? How many Boston stacks did I have? 5-man, 7. They were my 4th highest exposed team. I had like every team. I had every team on the slate, other than I think maybe 2 or 3. At least I think I had 3 Miami against Josiah Gray or what? I had that. But that lineup would be with Red Sox. I mean, that's the whole point. I'm using this chart. I'm using these types of concepts to how do I build these lineups? So that's the play whoever you want. That is what this means. Are Boston a good play? Well, it depends on the lineup. So it depends on what lineup it is. So you could play whoever you want. You could start with, I want to play the Brewers. And you go, okay. You could start with anything. The Brewers, based on slate IQ, are going slightly under-owned. So it's like, oh, okay. So if I play the Brewers, like I could play the Red Sox with them. I could play the Angels with them a little. I can play a chalk pitcher with them, and then you decide which direction you want to go. Maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to play the Milwaukee because you already decided on that. And I'll pair that with a Boston 3-man, but instead of playing Wheeler, I'm going to play Snell, right? Because now you're making up that leverage at pitcher. Or you could decide to say, I'm going to play Wheeler Ray and not play Boston 3-man. I'll find some, where do I get it? I'll play Toronto 3-man. That's fine also. You know how many combinations of what I'm mentioning is possible? Thousands upon thousands upon thousands, okay? And you look at all those lineups, they'd all look different. And if you ran them through a simulation 1,000,000 times, they'd all come close to equaling the same amount. Right? So it ends up being Milwaukee. You take Milwaukee and you make every possible combination. of 3-mans and 2 pitchers. The ones that show the most profit are the ones that obviously give you more leverage than others. The balance between them. It's tens of thousands. You probably could make hundreds of thousands of lineups like that. And if you had to choose between one out of the 100,000 lineups like that, I'd say whichever. Close your eyes. There's not going to be that much of a difference long run. So I hope you understand that. Let's see. Go through the YouTube chat. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba. And yes, obviously Slate IQ on RotoGrinders is based on the RotoGrinders Plate IQ projections and the RotoGrinders ownership. Right? So either one of those are off, obviously these numbers are going to mean less. So you're like, well, Boston is the highest chance, but I don't think they're going to be as owned as this. Or I think a team is going to be even more owned. Yeah, then obviously, right? If you think Milwaukee's going to be more owned, then obviously you're not getting 20% light. They're going to be over owned, right? So you could look here. I don't think look at Philadelphia. Philadelphia yesterday was not 1.2%. It was way higher. Philadelphia was more over here. But if the simulations only showed 1.7%, turns out Philadelphia was over owned yesterday, assuming the simulation is accurate. Does it make them bad plays? No. It just means that my Philadelphia lineups that I thought I was getting leverage with Philadelphia, I was actually giving. So Philadelphia plus Boston may not be plus EV lineups. That's all that it means. Some people come in and go, I'm going to build out the 100 lineups and X out all the, I got X out Boston, X out Minnesota. It's like, okay, good luck with that. You could still make plus EV lineups. You could actually make more profitable lineups with them than you can any other team. But if you're looking to exploit the field, you have to be careful in what you're making them, because people, I'm going to just do Boston, Minnesota, and the 2 chalk pitchers, right? The Angels, the Cleveland, then find out that, like, dude, every player in my lineup is 15 to 20% owned or more. I'm trying to win a 70,000 entry tournament. Like, nope, you screwed up. You make cash with that lineup, sure. But it gives you very little first place win equity. Let's see. Okay, Knobber 427, he got it. So you could use lineup HQ. Like if you're a RotoGrinders premium member, which you should be, click on the link in the description, get $10 off your first month. You could, even if you're a hand builder, you could use lineup HQ as a tool for research. Look at the bat projections if you have the bat. Look at the Plate IQ projections. Import your own projections. Aggregate around the industry projections. Change the ownership. You go, I don't think this guy's going to be this. I think Patrick Corbin's going to be 12% owned. Then change the number. Then run lineups and go, what fits into what? I noticed right away that, you're going to get a lot of first base one-offs today because the highest projected teams and owned stacks don't seem to have quality first basemen. That's the only way that why do you think that happens? Like, I'm getting 30% Brandon Belt and having no Giant stacks. I'll have some Giant stacks. Look at the discrepancy. Brandon Crawford, because the shortstop position is fairly weak today. Now you start to get a sense of how lineups are being built out. But most people don't think about how other people are building lineups. They go, I got to do that and I got to do this. Like, no, well, other people are going to do the same thing. So try to find a way to be different. Maybe it's the type of concept. I'm not saying you should go hard into this extent, but if like so many people are going to be playing one-off first baseman, you go the other way and say, I just always want to play the first baseman in any stack that I play, no matter if they're poorly projected. So you're playing Travis Shaw here instead of Kyle Schwarber. Okay, now at least you're thinking. Now, would you do that for every lineup? No, not necessarily. It's like, oh, I could play the Red Sox in a contrarian way by playing Shaw over Schwarber. And other people will have the Red Sox stack with another first baseman one. And I will be slightly different and get enough leverage by fading a 28% Schwarber, playing a 3% owned Travis Shaw. And by playing a 3% owned Travis Shaw, I'm fading a 20% Paul Goldschmidt or Brandon Belt. So like you're getting like all the leverage from not having Schwarber and then all the leverage from not having those first basemen. And then you're good. Your lineup's good. You're fading like 40% worth of ownership, right? At that point, and just like, okay, now I can play the Red Sox, even though if they're chalk. You can think that way. That's a positional way of thinking about leverage. So many ways to be different. And those lineups could be as good as the lineups you make with Schwarber and Belton. But now you have to get that. Now you'd be different elsewhere. Now you're playing Corbin and Hernandez together. That's not going to be chalk. Michael Dompier, if you have time, are you going to make one lineup for today's 3-game slate? No. I have no idea what's going on for today's slate. Today's 3-game slate? I have more to do what's going on tonight just from doing this. I have no idea. What would I do? Maybe I could quickly go through what would I do scenario. Let's take a look at. Said I've not looked at all. Do we have double headers or any of these double headers? We'll see that in the projections, right? We don't have ownership, whatever. Let's see. Going to assume. Oh, who's going to be chalky tonight? Gray Ryu. Is that going to be Rodon? I don't know if people are going to play that against Toronto. See, I don't know what the chalk's going to be. I'm assuming Ryu, Gray, Rodon, some combination of that. Right? So maybe Milwaukee is the best, the highest leverage opportunity, the White Sox. And you play Keegan Aiken against the Angels. I don't know. I just don't know. Angels have the highest run total. Yeah, that game is. Yeah, take a picture for that game. That's what that would be my first instinct of it's a 3-game slate. Gray could get blown up. You play Milwaukee. Most bats are going to come from this game, I'm assuming. Ohtani's probably going to be popular to some extent. Lagares, Baltimore, Berea, DJ Stewart, Jamal Jones, Cincinnati. It's Fred Anderson. People are going to play that. Yeah, that if I was playing the 3-game slate, I'd be playing Milwaukee. Milwaukee and the White Sox. They don't. I mean, from a point per dollar perspective, they don't project well. Are people going to play Rodon? Do you play the Blue Jays against them? I think more people play Gray. But I don't know. That like I said, I'm looking at this. Just the first 2 minutes, I'm even looking at it. That would be my first instinct. Looking at Milwaukee. Let's say we did that, right? Let's go to 1, whatever. It doesn't matter. Let's look at 5x Milwaukee. What are those lineups look like? Right, you're gonna get a lot of Gray. Oh, I didn't put in a stack type, right? Baltimore comes in a whole bunch because they're cheap. Let's say I play Milwaukee against Gray. Because look, look at the Ryu comes in. Gray comes like Ryu, Rodon, Gray. I mean, that's what I thought the chalk would be. So either you're playing Milwaukee against Gray, or you're playing Ryu, you're playing the White Sox against Ryu. Which is fine also. Just the Brewers are cheaper, right? And they got some lefties here, right? Yelich 5,100. Yeah, I would prefer the Brewers. So let's build to 20 lineups just to see what they look like. All right, so here you go. Rodon, Ryu from the same game, which is fine. Rainier, Suarez, Santander, Ohtani. You're taking one-offs over there. Rodon, Ryu. Is it going to be Rodon, Ryu, and all of them? Yeah. So something like this. Maybe you're playing a 5-3, right? Rodon, Ryu, Mountcastle, Urias, Santander, and the 5-man Brewers. But based on my first instinct of, obviously these are high variance lineups. This is not like what's gonna win. It's just what's the easiest path for me to win first place. So one of the chalk pitchers on a 3-game slate, the bust. And what's correlative to that bust? That the team that they're facing doing well. So if you just said, no, I'm going to play Sonny Gray and I'm going to stack somewhat. You don't have to stack 5-man. Maybe you're doing 4s. Maybe you're doing 3s. It's a small slate. You may not need 5-man to get there. But that's my instinct. The White Sox, the Brewers, or the Blue Jays. And then you're playing whatever pitcher you're not playing in that lineup, right? That's it. But yeah, that's what I'd be doing. And maybe I'd try to even avoid Ohtani as a one-off. They'll be in the Angel stacks, and they'll be popular. Right? I'd be more inclined to play locked 5-3 than an Ohtani one-off. Or you play a Phil Goslin one-off. It's like, okay, I don't mind that. Just not a big fan of the chalkiest guy on the chalkiest stack. On a short slate, where the ownership is already going to be condensed as it is. That's would be my thinking. Your thinking could be the same, just with different players. That's the point that I was making before. If you're like, oh, I get what you're saying, I'm going to play the White Sox, then I think that's fine also. But if you play the White Sox, you're not likely to get Gray here. I think the White Sox are more expensive, and you may not be able to get like Rodon plus Gray in that lineup without like getting some 2K player or something like that. Maybe you have the Oriole in that lineup. A lot of those lineups may look the same. Okie doke. So hit the thumbs up button on your way out the door. Thumbs, up, down, doesn't matter. Click around. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. If you want to do all this type of stuff that you can with Lineup HQ, you should sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Right? I'm in the Discord. You can ask me questions anytime you want there. Right? I'm in the Bat chat. I'm in the MMA chat. I'm in the MLB chat. I'm in whatever. So click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. Try it out for a month. Play around with Lineup HQ. You could use it as a research tool. People look at it like, I'm not playing 100 lineups. Look at what I did. Like, look, yesterday I picked out my lineup that I played in single entry, just from using Lineup HQ. You could do that. Play around with it all you want. Do all the research you want. All this combination. Oh, that combination. I didn't think of that. It's not just for building 150 lineups. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got a lot of stuff. We have Grinders Live coming up later today. Crunch time for premium members. Got stuff going on tomorrow. The NFL schedule is going to come out. It's going to be nuts, right? It'll be the type of thing where, I'm not going to be able to go longer than an hour on this because we're going to have 7 million things going on. Who knows? Do I get preempted? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. There's going to be tons of shows. Tune in, subscribe, hit the notification bell, tap around, hit the X button. Well, now you can hit the X button. The show is over, but I'll be back tomorrow for Casual Friday, where I discuss DFS strategy as always. Come on, that's what we do here. Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.